Hey y'all, welcome back to the Coffee Chat Podcast. I'm your host, DeAndrea Brown, and today's episode is extremely special, not just because who's joining me, but because of how the conversation happened. My guest today is Dr. KJ. She's a speaker, a leadership strategist, and she's also a creative powerhouse. She's living proof that leadership isn't just about titles, it's a daily decision. We're going to get into that today. And we're talking about growth, mentorship, and what it really takes to keep evolving decade after decade. Grab your coffee. This is one of those conversations that you also are going to want to take notes. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. KJ.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I am super excited. It's so funny because our first conversation was so powerful for me as we were preparing for this, when you kind of talked to me about your journey. But one of the things that you said to me really stuck in my head. And you told me that everyone has a choice to be a leader. And that's not how most people talk about leadership. So what does that look like? How did you, develop that type of mindset?
I think I came out of my mother's womb being a leader. I was extremely bossy.
Yeah.
Just probably my first words, just telling everybody what to do and how they need to do it because I know better. And I carried that through into my 30s. But what I learned as a professional that worked in corporate in my 30s, what I learned very quickly is that being a leader wasn't about being a boss. It's not so much about being at the head of the table as it is, do you know how to listen? Do you know how to really assess when your team is not responding to you? Do you know how to really pay attention to the cues of when your team is burnt out? So I didn't learn that lesson until later, probably later into my 30s where I had a team. And unfortunately, they weren't responding as well. And I was wondering, and I'm just cracking the whip. You need to do this. You need to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this. But the reality is that they were being burnt. They were burnt out. Not just from me, but just from other stressors that they had in their personal lives. So I really didn't personalize things. I didn't really get to know who are they. So I wasn't born a great leader. You become a great leader through how you navigate listening to people. That's number one. Are you paying attention to the people who you work for or the people that work with you or work for you? So I changed over time and realized, hey, when I became, I've always been, working for someone in some capacity, I started changing that mindset because I had really good people who were like, now I'm checking out. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to do something else. Right. And so that hard lesson is you're left, with people who are brand new, who you have to regain their trust, the whole process. It's harder on leaders when they think about, your best work are the people who are doing the work for you. That's where your best work is going to come from. It's not you. It's the representation of you being a great leader, because if they're doing great, you're doing great. And how do you make them happy? All the things that we don't think about as leaders.
That is a really good nugget to put on my brain, right? Because when people think about leadership, right, it's more when you're not a leader and you think about leadership, you think about it being ego driven, you think about it being a top down mentality. And to hear you say your best work is going to be by your team and the best person on your team, that does also make sense, because if your team is succeeding, that means that you're doing well in your job as well. So I want to take a step back to just understand like what your journey was, right? Because you came into leadership, you said you were in your 30s, but what did it look like for you before then? Were you signing up for different roles, volunteering, like heading different teams?
I was like, give me everything, When you're young, you're like, I'll take that. I'll do that. I'll do that. You want me to do the coffee run? I'll run the coffee. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm not really good at note taking. I never really had a role where I was an admin, and I failed. If I did, I probably got fired, but I was really good at taking instruction. And so when there were opportunities that came up that nobody wanted to take on grunt work or grunt tasks. What my grandmother taught me many, many years ago at a very young age is you can even learn from the person who picks up your trash, because and I'm talking about physical trash, right? You can even learn from people. You don't look at people's roles and titles and make the assumption that you can learn nothing from them because you've reached a certain point in your life. I'm a janitor, and I see you working late at night and I'm picking up your trash. Have you ever thought to have a conversation with that person, and then you come to learn that they own 3 homes?
They know the whole inner workings and the CEO for the company. They've seen the company from the inception and they know everything and,
Right,
schedules.
right.
You'd be surprised what
it's
information
it's learning from wherever you can learn, right? So I humbled myself. It didn't wasn't easy, right? But I humbled myself enough to go, okay, if I really want to get to a leadership role, not so much the money, but being in being involved and being in charge, so to speak, right? Whatever that means. I had to learn, and I had to take on projects, and I had to volunteer. Being lazy and wanting to be a leader doesn't come hand in hand. I mean, you can't just sit back and say, I want to be a leader and I'm going to go get all these certifications and I'm going to get all of this stuff and I'm going to get extra degrees and I'm going to become a leader. It doesn't work that way. Reality, it doesn't work, especially for people of color. It doesn't work that way, especially for women. It doesn't work that way.
I second this message. So a couple of the things that you said that you said you took on grunt work, right? So you are always volunteering and it may not have been leadership roles. So you're
Right.
like, I might not have been a line leader, but I was the person who, helped everybody get in the bathroom, right? So you were taking on roles in different capacities, but you feel like those were helping you to develop your leadership skills.
It's like
How?
a relationship, though, Deandra. It's like a relationship. You become a better person, you become a better partner when you date. They say, and this is the psychology of dating, you become a better partner by each person that you learn from. And it's the same concept if we apply it to learning and becoming a better leader. Every time I work with someone in my team, I'm going to learn from them and I'm going to become a better leader. So you're adding more nuggets into your sack and in your sack of leadership tools. This is your leadership bag. Well, I need to become, if I want to become a leader, and you're a better partner because of your experiences from your past experiences. You know how to navigate certain things because you have a level of maturity that you've developed because you had the opportunity to date different people. You know what to stay away from, you know what you like. So it's the same concept, I think, in leadership is learning from other people, learning from different experiences. So all of those experiences build up over time. It's like I think we talked about this, it's like your stepping stone, use every experience, no matter how small it is. My grandmother used to always say, no matter how small the task may seem, and you may seem like you're above this because you've got a master's, do it because you're going to get experience. That task is going to help you in another area of your career. And I kept thinking, oh, well, I've got a degree. I don't need to do this. In my mind, I'm thinking the same thing that other people think. I've made it so far. Why am I doing this task? But the reality is don't think of it that way. Think of it as this task, for some reason, is going to give me some information, and I'm going to learn information that I otherwise wouldn't have known for another role.
I definitely think that I started as a social worker and I have had so many roles that have required cross-functional experience, right? And it's
Mhm.
experience that they don't just outright teach you. So I definitely believe that
Yeah.
that's true. Every role is helping you get to your next one. So, one of the things that we talked about before I heard you speak on was how people are going into following mode, right? How do you help people recognize when they're defaulting to follower mode, especially in corporate or different community spaces?
That's a really good question. There are followers and there are leaders because it has to be a yin and a yang. It has to be a balance. But those who really want to become a leader and they find themselves just doing the same old thing, following information, following. So part of the things we talked about earlier was when you know that you're following, it's when you're constantly taking on new tasks, but you're not asking questions and you're not talking to other people in the organizations. You're not out there networking. You're not out there trying to learn more and get more. You're just taking on tasks. You're just doing what you're supposed to do, and that's it. That's follow mode. Follow mode is a mentality. It's not just the task. It's I am consciously choosing, right? Even if it's subconscious, that I'm just going to do my job and I'm not going to do anything else. Even if you say the words, I want to become a leader, I want to make more money, or whatever that means to you in terms of being a leader, you're still only doing your job. And that's the bare minimum. There is no leader, I don't care what industry you're in, that does bare minimum. Leaders go above and beyond constantly. It's a constant. You're constantly learning. You're constantly pushing yourself. You're pushing your own personal boundaries. And as a leader, you're pushing others. So you're motivating at the same time. It doesn't just stop with it's a mentality.
So, and I think that is a good call out when you even talk about follower mode. And of course, we know that there are going to be leaders and there are going to be followers, but I think from a personal perspective, for most people, you want to succeed and you want to excel at something, right? So even if you are taking on tasks, even if you aren't someone who's looking to be in leadership, it's still imperative for you to ask questions. It's still imperative for you to get visibility because you might not want to be a leader, but you want a promotion. You might not want to be a leader, but you want to make more money. You're not going to be seen as someone who is deserving if you are not going above and beyond. That's where promotions come from. It's like you have exceeded the expectations for this role. We now feel like you're ready to take on something new. And that isn't just in the sense of work. I feel like that's in the sense of life too. If you're an entrepreneur, if I work with a company or if I work with some sort of agency and I feel like they're going above and beyond for me, or even that sales rep, or even just going out to eat and the server is extremely nice, they're attentive, they are bringing things before we even ask for them, I'm going to go above and beyond and I'm going to tip them. They might not get my regular $10 or $15. They're going to get $25 or, whatever I'm feeling because they decided to go above and beyond and break out of that bare minimum mindset because you get what you put in. And I think that there's a lot of stigmas about leadership and being a leader, but I loved what you told me when you said leadership is a choice because you can choose to lead in whatever situation and whatever environment you're in.
No
You
matter
don't
what
have
it
to
is.
have a title to
But I
do that.
want to add to that. That's a concept of self management. You're right. Leadership doesn't mean you're leading a team. Are you leading your life with purpose, or are
But
you just
so
so?
it's like leadership is a lifestyle. It's not just a position.
Yes,
I think that's what we're both
yes,
saying. It's a
yes.
lifestyle. So what is one leadership behavior that you feel like people underestimate, but completely changes how you're perceived in terms of being ready for a leadership role or being seen as a leader that's
I
serious?
think the underestimate being a leader, let's say you're leading a team, regardless of what it is, right? If you're a leader and you're leading a team, many people underestimate is that the team is your success. It's a measurement of your success. If you are a leader of one, meaning you're self managing and you have purpose and you know what you want, I think what other people see, and even sometimes yourself, is that you underestimate the power of your gifts.
And I feel like as we've been having this conversation, you're demystifying leadership, right? Because you're shifting the focus from the person to the outcomes that they receive based on their leadership, right? Because
Right.
when we think of leaders, like you said, everybody wants to be the boss. It's very ego driven, but your true success as a leader is how happy your team is with your leadership, right? So
Yeah.
you're taking the I out of it, or recognizing that you can be a great leader and lead your team to success, or you can be a not so great leader and you're going to run into some bumps and you're going to have to keep finding new team members, right? So at some point, you were at that standstill where you've decided, I have to change something because I don't want to train new people. I want some tenured folks on my team. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's no I in the word leadership other than the SHIP, ship, like ship out, go mentality, right? I'm shipping out. I'm mentally checking out. So part of leader, being a leader, right? There's no I in it. And so being a leader, there is no I in leader. So how can you be a leader if you're like I, me, I? And again, you're not paying attention. This is a positive thing. There's a shift happening right now in corporate with leaders. And they're having more conversations around emotional intelligence because neurodivergents are being hired now in workplaces, and I mean, consciously being hired. And then other people who are already presently neurodivergents who are functional, meaning they're, for the audience, that means people who are on the spectrum, right? And so they're functional, they can work in corporate, but they tend to be extreme introverts from the outside looking in. That's what we would see, right? But highly intelligent individuals, and they're not very sociable. Some are not social, not all. And so I think we have an opportunity in this space, especially with your podcast, to talk more about subjects around people, their purpose, what they're driven to do. And we're dealing with the corporate mentality now that leaders are starting to say, you know, I'm I'm a neurodivergent, and I couldn't admit it because of the era in which I grew up in corporate. I'm an introvert and I couldn't admit it, but I really don't like people. I've just had to learn how to adapt. So to me, that's a leader, meaning a company that's saying, we're going to put the culture of the people first. That's a leadership business. I don't care if you're an entrepreneur and you have people who work for you or will plan to have work people for you. It's putting your people first, because you cannot be a successful organization, you cannot be a successful team without your people. And they call this thing called human capital, is the new name for us, right? As employees or contractors, they call us human capital. And that's real. We are an asset. So without us, there is no business. If we're not happy. Now I know AI is coming and automation and, robotics and all of that stuff. But the reality is, and I was just having a talk on this, the reality is it needs us. It still needs our human input. It still needs our intelligence, our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings. It still needs to feed off of information of who we are. And as a species, we're evolving. So I would say the timely of your podcast is awesome because we're embarking on a different era now of leaders.
Yeah, and I feel like this is also rooted in reinvention, right? This is grounded in pivoting. We have to think differently now. We have to approach similar situations in a different way. And I know one of the conversations you and I had was just about, reinventing yourself
Yes,
professionally,
yes.
personally. I told you that I feel like I have been reinvented every 5 years. And you said the same thing. So, do you feel like that there were signs that you had that it was time to evolve in your leadership style? I know you said you had some people leaving from your team. Like, what did that look like for you throughout your journey?
I think when you fail forward in life, when you fail forward, it makes a difference in how you get back up. And so I think having the opportunity to fail forward so many times in my career, I had an opportunity to stand up and say, that probably is not a good direction for me to go. even though I've got 5 different people telling me I should go in that direction.
Give us
But
an example of one of those
so
times you
I
decided
wanted
to.
to be, but I wanted to be an HR director many years ago. I was young. I was in my 30s, early 30s, and all the HR conferences were all these people that, much older than me. And I went to a conference and my boss sent me there because I was an HR generalist. And so I'm like, I want to be a director. I want to be, well, it's going to take all these certifications for you to be a director. And it's going to take another 5 to 10 years before you become a director. I kid you not. We paid our dues, so you'll have to pay your dues.
That industry is for sure.
Young, I'm like, no, it's not. I'm not doing all of that.
Not for me. Not doing that.
So this is why I love the generation now. I'll tell you why. I'm going to segue why I love your generation and love the generation now. Because that was my mentality. And so I'm a person who, and I said this in some of my talks, I colored outside the lines as a child purposely, not to get in trouble, but because I saw something bigger than just the picture. And so at some point they were just like, forget it. She's going to just keep coloring outside the lines. We just give her an A. She's not going to color
There you
inside the
go.
lines. She's coloring everything, but she's going to color outside the lines. So I did that and I said, no, I want to be an HR director. And after I got back from the conference, I made a commitment to myself to become an HR director. How did I do that? I was like, I'm going to find a job. So somebody's going to need somebody who knows, how to more than what I know. There's going to be some startup company, some company that's going to hire me, and I'm going to be able to bring a whole bunch of things and I'll learn more on the job. And that's what I did. I landed a position with a startup company, and back then it was .com. I landed a company which wanted to go IPO, like crazy money, right? And they said, "Hey, why don't you be our HR director?" I went back to that conference and I had the title HR director on my business card. So I'm passing out cards. They're like looking at me, looking at this. How are you a
Girl from
director?
last year. That's a
Right.
little girl
You
from
must have
last year.
cheated. How did you become a director? So a few of those uncomfortable conversations for them, because I was comfortable and confident. And when I say a director, meaning that I was in charge of everything and making big decisions for this company, right? And I'm huge decisions. And so I said, I have to find another way. And I really believe that when people start pigeonholing you and thinking that you only can learn one way, how are you supposed to pivot the way you're supposed to pivot? You're supposed to pivot. And tame with cybersecurity. They're like, well, you have a psychology degree. How the heck are you going to do anything related? You don't even know anything. You're a people person. You're not built for technology. And here I am with a PhD in ethics and business, being a leader in the forefront of artificial intelligence and governance years later. After someone said, you're not technical enough. And I got an MIT cert right here, but
Like,
you're not technical enough, right? So it's breaking the barriers and coloring outside the lines for yourself and not accepting the no or not accepting other people's ideas of what they think you should be. That's how you pivot. That's how you keep pivoting. You listen to what is inside of you and what you want to do.
that's awesome. I mean, you answered my next question. I was going to ask, like, for somebody who's scared to pivot, how do you move beyond that fear and still like bet on yourself? But
It's
tell us.
you. I mean, I think it first starts with uh, you said it earlier, believing in yourself, having enough confidence in yourself and not saying, I had to take some risk. I'm not going to lie. I was a single mom doing all these crazy things. Well, I left my cushiony job and became an entrepreneur in my 30s. Everyone said, we need to take your child away from you. Something's wrong with you
Like,
because
she is going off the
that's not
rails.
normal. You don't leave a nice, cushiony, permanent job that you can retire in for the rest of your life and do the same thing over and over and over again for 20, 30 more years. Leave that and become an entrepreneur and you have a child. Something is wrong with you. Yeah. But this is the bright side. The bright side of it is if you believe in yourself enough, you can make those sacrifices. And I'm a believer. So I really believe that regardless of what your audience believes in, whether it's God, whether it's the universe, it's all the same to me. But the bottom line is if you believe and you have enough faith in yourself, then I believe that you can accomplish anything you set your mind to. I grew up in a household where both my parents weren't my biological father and my mother lived in two different places. But what they ingrained in my head was the word no was out of my vocabulary. I didn't even know what the word no meant. So when someone said no, all I registered was yes. And so the God that I serve only hears yes. He doesn't know what no is. No is what's no. So do you want something? Yes, then you have it. Do you want something? Yes. Do you have it? Do you want to go after it? So I think it's a matter of faith in yourself, believing in yourself first. And it is not easy because you got to do a lot of self programming and reprogramming because other people getting in your head to say, well, I did it this way. What's wrong with Miss Brown? What's wrong? Why is she doing that? That's not normal. Should she be doing this?
Because, I mean, let's talk about it, right? There's a lot of fake support that you get. People want to be seen. And
Mm-hmm.
then a lot of people that don't understand your vision show up
Right.
as critics, right? We all have that internal critic within us. And we know that we're always trying to talk ourselves out of those big, scary goals. And having people around that may not be encouraging to those
Mm-hmm.
goals also helps with the self doubt. You're like, oh man, I don't think I can do it, and then somebody else is kind of like doubling down on that, right? And just recognizing that you have to protect your peace, especially when you want to do something that's different. You want to do it your own way and you're going to be visible. So how do you feel like you protected your peace as you continue to reinvent yourself? Because you're going in new industries, right? Like you said, you're going in new industries and becoming a disruptor. So how did you protect your peace, or like just maintain, I guess, your mission or the vision that you have for yourself as you
You're
transition to
not going to
different
like my answer. I don't
Okay.
think your audience is going to like my answer.
Okay.
But this is reality. Sometimes being a great leader, meaning for yourself, leading yourself and living with purpose and aspirations, goals that you want to accomplish, things that you put on your vision board, or even if you don't have a vision board, but it's in your vision board head, you know. Um, I think the reality is that the people who make it to where they want, I'll be honest with you, I carved out what I wanted to accomplish at 6 years old. And everything that I put on my list, with the exception of a husband, still, like, I'm not sure if I want that now, but everything I put on my list, I've accomplished. So I've checked off these things throughout my life. Now, did I purposely, intentionally pursue every single thing? No, just life happened, right? I put it out there. But what I learned is that the higher I went, the further I went of pushing myself and accomplishing a personal goal, it required solitude. It required separating myself from the noise and separating myself. And now that means not so much social media, it's monitoring how much social media I do. Right? It's just the monitoring it. You have a platform where you need to use social media, but once you've done it and you've done your job, you don't have to scroll every single night, but part of your job is you need to because you have to do research, right? So it's a balancing act. And the truth is that solitude is where you find your true self. And it is not easy to be alone. It is not easy to be alone in your own walk. And it is not easy to tell mom, dad, sister, brother, cousins, best friends, you're not hearing me. This is my walk. And this is where I'm supposed to be. And this is the platform. This is where I see myself. Don't you see it? Don't you see it in me? They're not going to see it. And it's okay that they don't see it. And I think your audience needs to know, if they're hearing me, hearing I'm speaking from my heart, being alone is hard. But that alone gives you power that nobody else, because you're in your own head talking and reprogramming yourself constantly of how great you are, how beautiful you are, how magnificent you are, what gifts you have to give the world. And then you have these visions, and you're like, "Oh, I live that. I live that." So I think the reality is that it's hard. It's really hard being in solitude, but that is where you find your power and your peace.
Well, I want to double click into that. And this is for our audience, but really, honestly, this is just a conversation between us because it really hit home for me when you said that. I recognize that I'm in one of those periods of my life, right? Like you have the periods where you're free, you're fun, you're doing everything, you're everywhere. And then you have those periods where you do realize that in order to get to the next level, in order for you to become whatever you want to become, it requires solitude. And it don't just require you to just sit down and lay on the couch. It requires you to be thinking. It requires you to be acting. It requires you to show up for yourself consistently in all areas and facets, because I also think that people dilute success and I want the things that make people successful, and the things that really make you successful are those small tasks, are those small thoughts, are those small manifestations, and just seeing things through. And I am in a period of seeing things through, whether it's okay, I'm fasting. So right now I'm fasting. So that's why I said I'm really in this period of appreciating time to myself because I'm not getting instant gratification. I'm fasting from things that on a daily basis just bring me that comfort, right? Like
Right,
coffee. I
right.
can't have a coffee chat today because I can't drink coffee right now. But not having those things makes room in my mind for things that are creative or other things that I want to fast for or other goals that I want to
Mhm.
accomplish. And I'm doing that in solitude. I'm doing that by myself. I'm stepping away from the phone. I'm writing all of my thoughts out. I'm journaling or I'm researching or I'm trying to find different platforms or I'm trying to get my platform or find guests. Like as I am going more into solitude, as I'm focused more on myself and just bettering myself, I'm seeing the results on a daily basis.
Yes.
Even from a mindset shift,
Yeah.
it's a big mindset shift when you are accomplishing your goals, big and small. And that's what I'm saying. I feel like a lot of people look at success or look at leadership as this big thing, but it's a lot of small decisions. It's a lot of small choices. And it is that solitude and that reassurance of yourself, having that time where you just think of your own thoughts and you're not consuming
Mhm.
opinions from others. So that when you do go in those environments and when you do have those conversations, you already have your
Right,
own frame of reference,
right,
or I don't know
right.
what.
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, you have your own frame of reference for what your thoughts are around it. I'm not on TikTok because I'm a big TikToker, right? And I am recognizing the effects, right? And we haven't talked about your book in AI. We're going to get into that. But I'm recognizing the effects of AI and how it is like we're consuming it like to our own detriment, right? We
Mhm.
cannot be by ourselves anymore.
Yeah.
We have an algorithm that is going
Yep.
to give us those
Yep.
dopamine hits every 5 seconds. So if you get
Yeah.
any anxiety or any uncomfortable, if you're walking into a social situation, anytime you feel uncomfortable, you're going to grab your phone. You're
Mhm.
going to go to an outside source for comfort. And now that I'm fasting from these things, I'm like, wow, you have to self soothe. You have to quiet the noise. You have to learn how to do that for yourself. And I don't think that people are really understanding like how technology is impacting us from all areas, right? And especially when it comes to solitude, because
Right.
you used to go to sleep as a kid and the TV was off, right? Like you couldn't have the TV on. Now people we going to sleep with TikTok on our phone. We are constantly
Yeah.
stimulated and we don't have time to think for ourselves. So that's really what I wanted to say. Just finding the time to think for yourself and quiet your mind, quiet what's going on around you, and appreciating being bored, because there's a lot that comes from that. And it's a lot that comes from that time that help people that are successful continue to be successful.
Yeah, I agree. I used to say this to my son at a very young age. I used to say, when you become successful, not if, when I put that out on him, when you become successful, and because he wanted to go to a certain level in his career, I said, it is lonely up there. Take it from me. It's lonely. Success, lonely from the perspective of people, lonely. You're not going to find a lot of like minded people up there. And the few that you find up there, you got to still decipher through all of those and decide who is really got your back, who is really genuine, authentic enough to say, I see you, I support you, right? I see where you're going. I don't want just something for my, I don't want self gratification. I don't have this hidden agenda as I'm supporting you, right? That genuineness, even if you're up that, even if you're up here and you make it and they made it, you still got to decipher from who is rotten and who isn't, right? Great apples is always going to have few rotten apples in it. They're perfect, perfectly beautiful apples, but it's always going to be something rotten in there. And so you still got to decipher that. And so I would tell him constantly, and I adopted this principle, which is, if I'm telling my son, hey, if you want to reach a certain point of your life, be prepared. When he reached that, I got phone calls saying, I don't understand. I don't understand why these people who I thought were my friends, or I thought was this, and I thought this person was this. I get constant phone calls like, what's wrong with these people? I've reached this point, and I'm talking family included, not being in the same space as other people. You are a unicorn. And I tell people like you all the time, when you are a unicorn, unicorns don't run in packs, right? I mean, we know it's fictitious, but they
You
don't
know,
run in packs.
you know what you're describing? There's this song that I love, but they talk about the side effects of success. That's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you're talking about. The
Exactly.
side effects of success. And again,
Yeah.
that is the invisible layer. That's why I said I
Yeah.
feel like people conflate success, they conflate leadership, what that looks like. They make it very simple when it's extremely complex. This reward that you are seeing externally, there are a lot of things that you're losing. There are a lot of people that you're losing. There are a lot of battles that you lose
Mm,
to win that war. At every level, it continues to happen. Throughout your journey, it continues to
right.
happen. And it's really the side effect of success, right?
It
You are
is.
successful, but there are a lot of things that you lose. There's a lot of things that you sacrifice, a lot of people that aren't there along the way with you that may have started with you. And that's hard because people just look at success as just this monolith, right? It's like you get to the top of the mountaintop and it's like, oh, this is great. But it's like, I started with 10 people at the
But they
bottom.
don't see, they don't see
Right.
how, they don't see the journey. They don't see the
Yeah. You
process
don't
it
see
took
how
for you
many
to
times
get
you
where,
stopped. Yeah.
no, they
You don't
don't
see how
see
many
any of
times you
that.
stopped, how many times you cried, how
Nope,
many times
nope,
you like,
nope,
I don't want to go. You want to go
nope,
back, and then you're like, I'm too far up to go back
yep,
down. You
yep.
know what
I
I'm
just
saying?
want to put the covers over my head. I don't want to get up. Yeah, they don't
How
see that.
I wake up sometimes and I'm like, it is so hard being me. And I don't even feel like I'm nobody. So I can't imagine the weight that other people have, but it's just like, I wouldn't want it any other way. Like, I wouldn't want a different heart. I have hearts. We all have hearts in different areas, and we make choices.
Can I share this with you real quick? So there's this concept of imposter syndrome that people are throwing out all over the place. And some people are saying, oh, well, I have imposter syndrome. I have this, I have that. Well, I'll be honest with you. I'll be straight with you. You have imposter syndrome, and that's all psychological. You got it, it's psychological. If you're feeling that you have imposter syndrome, there's an element to the fact that you're not believing in yourself. Imposter syndrome really in my opinion, in my humble opinion, doesn't exist other than allow you, it's a fear,
It
fear,
is a
right?
fear. It's a fear.
So I don't I don't buy into the imposter syndrome concept. I spoke about it, I speak about it, but I also let people know when I talk about it that it's here. So if you say you have imposter syndrome and you're believing that you have it, that means you're not believing that you can do what you say you can do. Even if you're not good at it, learn how to master what that is. Because none of us know anything in perfection. Literally, it doesn't exist. I don't care if there is a black triple belt. No one still has the absolute perfection in anything. So I'm saying that to yourself, I'm saying that to your audience, that the concept around that is we talked about it earlier, which is believing in yourself, right? And part of that is knowing when you are in your silent moments, what are you really doing with it?
That's the part right there. Right there. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say, you just turned into a pastor. I don't know if y'all got nothing from that, but she was spitting, she was preaching, okay? Because it really is. I feel like it's confidence, and that's what I'm learning, right? As I continue to do it, I don't feel like an imposter. And I'll use the me doing this podcast, right?
Right.
I started off and I'm like, I've been the idea forever, all of these things. I had all of these reasons, but I had to come to terms with the fact that you do not believe in your gift for real. You do not believe in yourself for real. If you see other people doing it, you can do it and you're scared. You're scared. You
Yeah,
have a fear. You have a fear of being seen. You have a fear of failing. And that's typically what that imposter
it
syndrome is,
is.
right?
It
I
is.
can go in a room with people that do this and I can do this naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so confident of myself that I wouldn't say anything. I would be silent. I wouldn't give any, input because I feel like an imposter. And
Right.
it wasn't until I actually started taking steps and I started doing things and I started gaining confidence that I no longer felt that way. Right.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that it's a one-way street, right? Because you still continue to go to different levels, but through action I have gained so much confidence through action. Even just coming up to you, I came up to you.
And I was you saw how I reacted too, right? I was when I saw that you had your own podcast, I was like, oh my God, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what it is, but what can I do to help? And
That's
there are
what I
people
had
out
to do.
there
Like,
like that.
see, and honestly, I swear to you, like that. One of my biggest fears about having my podcast was guests didn't want to be like relying on people. I didn't, and it was like I just came. I was like, I got a podcast. You're like, oh my God, like you just like grabbed me in and was like, we have to do something. And that just did something for my confidence, right? Because I'm scared. I'm out here. I'm like, I want to tell people this is my audience profile, right? These are the people that I want to subscribe, and these are the people that I want to have on my show because we're aligned. And just by me not being afraid to just introduce myself and say, I have a podcast, I would love if you would be on. That was like a transformational moment. But that's when I think about, imposter syndrome, because I am the same person with the same talents and the same skills that I was when I was fearful than I
That's
am
right.
right now on this conversation with
That's
you.
right.
You know what I'm saying? And all it took was for me to take action, for me to see this to fruition, and for this to come about, for us to grow our relationship, for us to, have this conversation today. So I really, really receive the message that you're saying, because what you do when nobody's around, I'm up editing these podcasts, sending emails, correspondence, scheduling stuff, and it bringing me so much fulfillment, but also confidence. And I'm hungry to continue to keep going based off of the response I'm getting and the action that I'm consistently taking in those
So
quiet moments.
I want to ask you, well, dialogue real quick. That question you asked me earlier about being a leader and it being a concept of people who are leaders and people who are followers, right? But everybody has, it's a choice. Everybody chooses to be a follower. You choose to be a leader. It's a choice. So even though all of us have the ability to be, so, and it's okay. But the difference of what that person who's the follower and the person like yourself and others that are unicorns out there that are listening to this podcast, the difference is that as a unicorn, you take initiative.
Yeah, action.
You take initiative. A follower has to be told, when we're talking about tasks, a follower has to be told what the tasks are. That's a follower. I don't care if they have a C-suite title, okay, at a major corporation. They have to be told what to do. They got the job because of paper credentials. Not saying that they didn't work, but they got the job because they were told what to do and they did what they have to do. And then again, there's that person who owns the company, and then there's the person that's sitting in the C-suite. And so I'm saying that for everybody out there who's saying, well, I have this really high level title. I'm now officially a vice president and director, and I made it this far. That's great. But what are you doing in terms of your silent moments? Are you reaching back? Are you giving back? Are you giving back to yourself? Are you giving back to your family? Are you gifting someone something more than? Are you gifting your own company something? And I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, are you giving back what you're putting in? Because you can say, I got all the big titles, and I'm saying to your audience too, right? You can say, I've got the big titles, I've made it to this far, but stop and think. What are you doing in your silent moments? Are you scrolling, or are you really using that time to really pivot and start being strategic in your thought process of, I want to do more than just be a VP. I want to own my own company. That's initiative. There's nothing wrong with a steady paycheck. God knows I would love to have a steady paycheck again. But the reality is that, are you following your heart's desire? And I know there's some people who can't do that right now. And I'm saying, as a person who's over 50, it's not about age. It's about starting when you can start when you need start. And you really hit it on the nail tonight, which was, hey, what about the things that you do of the small wins? What about the things that you can do to say, hey, I've accomplished this, I've accomplished this. They may not be great. So what? They're not on social media. Who cares? I know I accomplished that. And your audience need to hear that, right? It's the baby steps. Even if you're saying, I got the title, but I want to do more, that's still the key word of taking initiative. That does set you aside from being a follower.
I think when I stopped avoiding the thing that made me uncomfortable, or when
Uh-huh.
I started to take the actions, is when I seen the fruits of my labor. So, okay, it wasn't, I came up to you and I said, okay, I got a podcast, but I also sent you a follow. I sent you a follow up. I'm like, hey,
Yep.
let's talk this week. These are times I got you. You ain't got this week. Let's go next week. Okay, we've rescheduled. We talked in August. I had to go
Mm-hmm.
back. I'm like, when did we talk? We talked in August.
It was August.
It's October. And I'm like, but it was the consistency of those small actions. It's like, okay, we need to reschedule. Let me make sure I email back. Let me make sure we have the information. Let's get aligned. And again, so the small steps are what get you to that big reward. Cause it's
Right.
like, okay, all of those small steps, you even came back, right? You circled back one time. It had got a little, dead. And you was like, hey, what's
We're
up?
doing this?
So, I was like, okay, that was on my to-do list. But yes, come on, let's get this schedule. I emailed you back right away. So I definitely think that that's a lot to be said about, the small moments. And you mentioned that you're in your 50s, but I would love to know if you could sit down with your 30-year-old self, right? We talked a lot about, your transitions in your 30s and what that looked like. What would you tell yourself about leadership, boundaries, your identity? I'm in my 30s. So tell me and your future self what.
It was a good time, but it was a hard time in my life. Great things happened when I was in my 30s. Great things happened, and then not so great things happened. I would tell my 30-year-old self to pace myself. Go after the wins, but don't try to consume it. It's a pie, right? So take one piece of the pie off at a time. Don't try to consume the entire pie because you can get exhausted at a very young age. You can burn yourself out physically and physically affect your health and well-being. I would definitely say that would be my first tip. Pace yourself because you have time, and don't try to do everything like right now. Just, accomplish what you can accomplish, check that box off, go to the next. But don't try to take everything on. And you're typically entrepreneurial mindsets, or people who are not entrepreneurial but they're unicorns. They tend to want to take everything, they want to do everything at the same time. And that's just our nature. But the reality is that our bodies can't, mind, body, soul, and spirit cannot consume that much at one time. Something is going to fail if you don't slow down. And so I would definitely tell myself that, because that was my breaking point of my failures in my 30s. Was I tried to consume too much. The second thing I would say is listen better. I definitely would say, if I had the listening skills that I have now versus the ones that I had then, I think I could have gone even further, or I would have learned more, or probably both if I had just listened. I mean, really listened.
So at 50, being in your 50s, I know that you are in a space that you still have to remain coachable, right? You still have to learn. Everything is changing. You said you appreciate my generation, which I don't be hearing that too often. Everybody be beefing with the millennials, but
Tell the audience why I appreciate your generation. It's not because my son is in your generation, but I'll tell you why I appreciate your generation. The number one reason is because you don't take BS. Number one, you don't tolerate it for yourself. You push back, you set up your own boundaries. This generation is disruptors. Disruptors like we had in the 60s, where they refused to work for corporate America. They eventually did, right? Because they wanted families and everything like that. But your generation is disruptors. You're coloring outside. And remember I told you how I mentally, right? I'm just different. I'm not like my other peers, right? My mindset is different. So I'm a person who grew up as a child coloring outside the lines. So I have a different, unique perspective on your generation because you color outside the lines. You're like, I'm not going to a 4-year college, but I do know how to be an entrepreneur. And if I don't, I'm going to go to this, take these classes, get these certifications, and become the best that I can become. And I'm going to make an income by doing something different, something unique. I can't tell you how many millions of people in your generation that are making more money than their own parents were when they were in their 30s. So your generation does something unique. And I think that our society needs to start embracing that. And coloring outside the lines is a big deal as you get older, because you cannot always be in the box. If you sit and do the same thing, can you imagine where our society will be? I mean, your generation is changing the course of history right now by universities having to go online. They have to give you courses online because they need you to come back to take classes, to make it affordable for you to take classes. And that's affecting our whole ecosystem. So you guys are pushing boundaries. Because of your generation, you're saying emotional intelligence needs to be in the workforce, not just the typical trainings that we get in HR, you know, emotional intelligence. So I think that Your generation is pushing boundaries beyond what our society's accustomed, and I think it's a beautiful thing. But it's a rinse and repeat. You're not the only generation that's done that. The sad thing is that my generation and older is looking down and going, you guys are doing things way too different. You're pushing boundaries way too far. Well, that's a part of coloring outside the line.
Well, that's something that you've heard before too. It sounds like you are like really a millennial. You got a millennial
And
mindset.
in my heart,
So, what do you think your future self would say 10 years from now? What would you thank you for learning today?
wow, grace. That would be, I start with grace. I give myself a lot more grace than I used to. Patience. I applaud the fact that you're a lot more patient than you used to be. And that patience has served me very well. And self love, a level of gratitude for self love that I've never had in my life.
Yes, so that is really powerful. Well, Dr. KJ, thank you so much. This conversation has been grounding, it's been liberating, and it's been so necessary. Thank you for helping me to feel seen and where I am in my journey right now. I feel like my biggest takeaway, and I don't know about you guys, but my biggest takeaway is that leadership is not a title, it's a daily choice. It's a lot of small choices that help you build confidence to your success. Um, for those of you who are listening, I want to challenge you this week to check on your own leadership posture. How are you leading people around you? How are you leading in the teams that you're in? Are you choosing it? Are you waiting for permission? Are you in follower mode? Definitely want you to recognize where you are. And you can connect with Dr. KJ through the links in our show notes. So we're going to put up her LinkedIn and other places that you can find her online. And in this, if this conversation moved you, share it on Instagram, tag us on LinkedIn at the coffee chat. And until next time, thank you so much for Dr. KJ for coming on today.
Thank you, Deandra. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.